What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show here tonight on the channel. I am John Kurtz, your lovely host. As always, today, man, crazy that we are here in the realignment world. But as you guys can see from the title of the video, all of a sudden we're going to be talking about George W. Bush and Condoleezza Rice in this whole realignment game. I'm not entirely sure how exactly we got here, but we are here. Realignment never fails to deliver. It never fails to deliver entertainment. And for once, I do have to make this joke, this little pun. We're talking about a George that is not the typical punching bag George. This time it is George W. Bush, former president, not poor George Kliavkov, who is certainly not kicking ass this week and has not been for a very long time now. But things are a little bit wild. Things are a little bit wonky. We're going to talk about what Condoleezza Rice and George W. Bush are trying to do for SMU and Stanford to continue realignment, continue to make moves happen. And there's actually, per a Ross Dellinger story that dropped right before I started the live show tonight, there's actually like a weird finagled path to how this could actually all net money for the ACC. They could make some money off of adding Stanford and SMU. I don't know about Cal, and Cal's problem is going to be financially related here because they do not have the financial wherewithal to enter the ACC without taking an actual payment from the league's TV contract. So a lot of things at play. I found that very fascinating, the strategy that is here that could actually help out the ACC. So we are going to discuss that. Brett Yormark did a great interview, which honestly could have been the main basis of the show here. Brett Yormark did a great interview on the Marshan and Oran podcast. You should all go listen to it. I would highly, highly encourage that. It was great. I listened to it this morning, and he went through a number of topics, namely the fact that expansion, in the words of Brett Yormark, for right now for the Big 12 is done. Expansion is done for the Big 12 right now per, I almost said George Kliavkov. I'm sure George Kliavkov would love for it to have been done before that, per Brett Yormark. That was the real headline. He also discussed a call that he had with George Kliavkov, speaking of George. And I would say took a little bit of a, maybe not a shot at Greg Sankey, but certainly a I'm not backing down message thrown out there at Greg Sankey, which you know I'm all about that. I freaking love it from Brett Yormark. He talked a little bit about basketball. He was asked about pro rata, if Fox is going to kick in for the Four Corner schools, because there has been some debate. There has been conflicting reporting about how all of that is going to be handled. So we will get to that and cover that. As always, it seems like every single day that I open up Realignment Twitter, I can find an article with just gruesome details about the end of the Pac-12, how they conducted themselves over the last year. And this time we can parse it down to a wild detail about one president, particularly sparking some things here. And George Kliavkov just paying way too much attention to UCLA and trying to put that toothpaste back in the tube. So more good reporting. This time it's from the LA Times. So, you know, pretty esteemed reporters on the case there. So that's the outline for today. That's what we have. Those are kind of the main stories that we will be chewing on. But if you have been here before, you know the deal. You know how this works. You can control the content here on the show tonight. You do so by, with over 100 people in the chat here tonight, I will not be able to follow everything. You do so by attaching a donation to your question or comment in the chat tonight. Your super chat will then be starred. Now that I am in StreamYard, it stars it for me. So I've got it in a whole separate column. It will guarantee that it gets on the show tonight. That is how you can make your voice heard, control the content, and support the work that I'm doing here on this channel to bring you Big 12, conference realignment, college football, and college basketball content on a regular basis. Could not do it without all of your support. So I sincerely, sincerely appreciate those of you who do support the channel that way. If you want to do it in a totally free way, all it takes is one click. I just need one click. That's it. And that will help support me as well. That one click, of course, being the like button. You could like the video. I would much appreciate it. And if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please consider doing so. I'm live twice a week talking conference realignment, college football, college basketball, all with a Big 12 perspective here on this channel. So please do that if you could. Leave a comment in the comment section before, during, or after. All of that stuff really helps too. And if you're watching this after the fact, as you can see on the scrolling banner below, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo to contribute to the channel as well. Hey, if you're a K-State fan, you can Subscribe to the 3MAW Patreon, by the way, also. Just $5 a month. If you want some extra K-State content, patreon.com/3MAW. So that's my laundry list of things I have to get out of the way. For all of you guys, appreciate everybody for being here. And we start off with my guy, R. Webb. R. Webb says, George W. got to keep SMU alum Laura happy. That is correct. His wife is an SMU alum. I had a whole little blurb on that. Bush's wife, Laura, attended SMU, and his presidential library is located on the school's campus. But yes, R. Webb, I think that is much more about Laura than it is any presidential library, right? Happy wife, happy life. Trying to, these are, imagine being in this sort of position, right? Where happy wife, happy life means maybe I can go affect the National Conference realignment landscape. Maybe I can get in on the college football expansion train that's going on here right now. Just a wild sentence to be saying out loud, but that's where we're at. And George Bush is trying to do that. So very, very good, very appropriate, very true. R. Webb, no doubt about that. Okay. You want to join the conversation as well, click the $ below the chat box where it says either chat or say something. I'm not sure because now I'm in StreamYard. But below the chat box, click the $. You can attach a donation to your question or comment to get on the show here tonight. All right, let's start with the George W. Bush, Condoleezza Rice involvement in realignment here. So this article comes from Ross Dellinger. Okay, Ross Dellinger of formerly Sports Illustrated, now Yahoo, gives us the information here and says powerful figures connected to Stanford as well as SMU are on a campaign to encourage leaders within the ACC to rethink their position on acquiring the two schools as well as Cal. Both of those figures, Condoleezza Rice and George W. Bush, have communicated with conference officials in pursuit of a membership invitation for the schools in which they are vested. Multiple sources tell Yahoo Sports. Rice, the former U.S. Secretary of State, is a Stanford professor who serves as the director of the school's Hoover Institute. And Bush's wife, Laura, attended SMU as presidential library is located on the school's campus. The door to expansion remains cracked open, and discussions have continued into this week. So that's another headline here. Stanford, Cal, SMU to the ACC, not totally dead right now. But Dellinger does say, however, another vote isn't scheduled and a decision isn't imminent. From Stanford's perspective, there is urgency. The Cardinal has no home starting next July. To make matters more urgent, its decision is impacting the remaining Pac-12 schools. Yeah, man, I tell you what, Oregon State and Wazoo, I know we've all said this a million times. You have to feel for them for a number of reasons. This is one of them. They are just sitting here waiting on Stanford. They can't really proceed with much until they know what's going to happen with Stanford. I suppose you can lump Cal into that sentence too, but it's really all about Stanford. They're the linchpin. Stanford clearly doesn't have any interest in trying to go to the Mountain West. It would be rebuilding the Pac-4 if they were to come back, but you just don't know what's going to happen. You do not know what is going to happen as far as that is concerned. So that is a difficult spot to be in, especially when you only have 6 games on your schedule for next year, which is the situation facing those two schools right now. Here's a quote from Dellinger. He says, quote, "The clock is ticking," says one administrator, and quote, "Stanford is the domino," says another. "We're all waiting on Stanford." Stanford holds the country's 4th largest endowment at $36.3 billion. $36.3 billion. That's actually down. The stat that I had been reading was like $37.8 billion. So I guess rough year for the Stanford crowd, huh? Got that endowment down to only $36.3 billion. Now here I think is where it starts to really get interesting. Could it afford to enter a conference for free and forego any league distribution? Sure. Will it? In conversations with Big Ten and ACC officials, that prospect has been discussed. All right, so Stanford now is discussing going the SMU route, right? Just taking some money out of their own pocket to pay their way in just for the sake of being in a Power 5 conference. Such a move would change the calculus and the single most important piece of the ACC's expansion decision, money. And now it kind of all becomes clear. It makes more sense why this would be being discussed, right? Because if you are Stanford and you come in and you pay your way for a little while, now if ESPN is going to kick in what is contractually obligated of them, you have some money to disperse among everybody. Now, how evenly that actually happens is a whole other discussion, and Florida State would certainly like to be involved in that discussion and take a bigger chunk of the money. So there are still going to be complications and problems with that, but that is at least a little bit of something. The ACC's television contract with ESPN includes a pro rata clause requiring the network to increase the value of the deal by 1 share for every new member. However, ESPN is only required or is only willing to give its base share and not the share tied to the ACC network. Okay, so getting a little bit convoluted and confusing there, but each additional expansion share is believed to be about $20 to $25 million, roughly 70% of the full share that the current members receive. So that's what ESPN would be contractually obligated to kick in. They would have to kick in 20 to 25 million bucks. If Stanford came in, so there's a pro rata clause here, but it's not saying if this pro rata clause is actually going to be for non-Power Fives. Like we know the Big 12s is about Power 5 members. There was a pro rata clause there in the ESPN contract. We are not sure here, at least according to what I am reading, whether or not that would be P5, which would affect SMU, whether or not SMU paying their way in would actually give the conference extra money. I'm going to guess probably not. And that's a part of why like SMU is prepared to go like 7 years of paying their own way. Like they're prepared to go big here, which makes sense. With deep-pocketed boosters, speaking of SMU, and a hungry desire to join a power conference, SMU officials are prepared to forego a share for as many as its first 7 years in the league. Stanford may be willing to do the same or take a significantly reduced share. Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong on the pro rata because now that I'm reading ahead in this article, Dellinger goes on to say, if at the very least, the ACC receives $60 million in new money from 3 newcomers, and Cal is the only program taking a share, where does the rest of the money go? In theory, a portion of it is distributed across the conference to offset travel costs. So Cal is in a ton of debt, right? Cal can't really afford to do this. Their athletic department is in a ton of debt. They're in a pretty rough financial situation there. So if we're saying that they're going to have to take a share, then the other two don't, you'd be left with what, like $35-40 million, some of that. Dellinger says, in theory, a portion of that money would be distributed across the conference to offset travel costs. But the bigger question, what happens to the rest? That number could be in excess of $25 million. So the league may be inheriting an extra $25 million per year by these schools coming in over the next like 7 years if they're both prepared to actually do that. If they are desperate enough to get into the ACC that they would forego their revenue coming in from TV for 7 years, then that could give the ACC 25 million extra bucks to play around with. That actually could start to at least get a little bit of somewhere with Florida State, I suppose. I'm trying to do the math in my head right now. Like, what's somebody good at math? Give me like what the 25 million divided by everybody in the conference would be for an actual share there. I mean, I guess it's really only an extra couple $1 million, but that's sort of what the ACC is dealing with right now, trying to find ways to milk a couple extra $1 million out of a couple of different places, and that could at least maybe somewhat placate Florida State for a little while, but I don't think that's really a long-term solution. But you might be able to flip one of those votes. Remember, the ACC has been 1 vote short. If it at least now you're going to prove like, hey, we would be able to add $2 to $5 extra $1 million per school per year, whatever it might be. If we added these 2 schools, the university presidents are already on board because they love the academics of Cal and Stanford. Maybe now that would flip one more athletic director to come over to the side of expansion for the ACC. So it does appear that there's at least somewhat of a path there. There's at least somewhat of a path there for this to happen. Dellinger says, either way, this is new money coming into the league. It's good news for a conference that spent the past year working to find additional revenue. The obvious answer is to distribute the additional revenue evenly across the conference. And while many schools in the league are in support of such a move, the conference's biggest brands are not, most notably Florida State and Clemson. Says, but that is one small portion of conference revenue. The largest portion, that from the television deal, will continue to be spread evenly among schools. In 2 board meetings over the past 8 months, Florida State officials have made clear that they believe a change to the distribution model should go further. TV revenue should be split evenly too. All right. So there's a little about Florida State here. I'm gonna cut this off for right now. We're going to cut this discussion off and get to a couple of donations, because I think the real focus here is, like, to me, the newsworthy piece of this. I mean, outside of like the headline that draws you in is like, what? George W. Bush and Condoleezza Rice are involved here. But really the crux of what is going on here to me is like, hey, both of these schools now are talking about finding ways to come in without taking any of that money, which could give the ACC some extra money if ESPN is willing to actually kick it in. Now there seems to be a little bit more plausible path as to how this could actually happen. I stopped short of saying makes sense because really, truthfully, honestly, does SMU and Stanford to the ACC make any real sense? No, of course not. It's the Atlantic Coast Conference. We're talking about the Pacific Coast, which is where Stanford is, and then Texas, not anywhere near the Atlantic Coast. So none of it actually makes sense. But it seems like a more plausible path to where this could actually happen, where the ACC could pick up enough votes to make this happen. I do actually now see how that could happen. Whereas before I was like, university presidents can talk all they want about, hey, this is great. We'd love to have the prestige of Stanford and Cal in this conference, at least the Stanford piece. SMU, I think, is at least passable for the ACC. I believe they were ranked like 72nd in that ranking of universities in the country. So they're at least passable and would get you into Texas. I'm at least seeing like why the door would still be cracked open here. But they probably are going to have to be willing to go in without taking any of that TV money for any of this to happen. It's just, man, it's nice to be as a Big 12 fan on the other side of this where you're not quite as locked into like the day-to-day and all these details about it, because now it's just like your head's got to be spinning if you're in the ACC or the Pac-4. Like the spotlight is totally away from the Big 12. Brett Yormark, which we're going to talk about in a minute, Brett Yormark has said on the Marchand and Oram podcast that expansion is done. They're not going after UConn. They're not going after Gonzaga. For right now, the focus is going to be on integrating the new four. So the Big 12, which for, a year, we've been in this mode. For 2 years, we've been in this mode. We're like, wow, what is going to happen? And then, hey, are you going to expand? What's Yormark going to do? Or you're in this chase for the – now you've caught up. You got what you needed, and you can kind of kick back and just watch what's going on in the ACC and the Pac-4 and wait and see if anything happens. Wait and see if anything explosive happens, which another thing we need to talk about today is the fact that we made it past that August 15th deadline without Florida State doing anything too rash. So when does it actually happen that Florida State is going to leave the conference? That becomes the next question. I like this. Will says, and thank you for your support, Will. Much appreciated. Will says, does this mean conference TV deals are weapons of mass destruction? I saw a couple people making that joke, which is that is pretty funny. To my knowledge, no weapons of mass destruction in conference realignment, except for Brett Yormark, baby. Except for Brett Yormark, there's your weapon of mass destruction. Brett Yormark coming down and mass destructing the Pac-12. Huh? How about that? Or if you would prefer, perhaps the more accurate way to frame that is the weapons of mass destruction were actually the Pac-12 presidents. The Pac-12 presidents were the weapons of mass destruction because they were the ones that imploded the conference. Maybe if you wanted to say George Kliavkov, he definitely made some mistakes, but the more that you read about it in these kind of like postmortem pieces on the Pac-12, I think he was really swimming uphill with the presidents. He certainly played his role. But if we're going to talk about the WMDs in that situation, it is absolutely the Pac-12 presidents, I think, before anybody else. So that analogy actually works really well, Will. I think you can extrapolate that out in a number of different funny ways. So I appreciate you bringing it to the table. Appreciate you guys making the jokes. Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. Hey, you guys need a real estate agent in San Antonio. You know who to call. It's right there on the screen. Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. Hit him up. Appreciate your support of the channel, Eddie, as always. Eddie says, great job on realignment coverage. Welcome to all the new Big 12 schools. And indeed, welcome to all the new Big 12 schools. Come on in. Stick around. Stay a while. Arizona State, Arizona, Utah, Colorado. Even if Arizona State, your president, Michael Crow, continues to gush over the Pac-12 TV deal. Yes, there was a new soundbite going around. I believe it was AZ Central who was doing the interview with Michael Crow, the president of Arizona State, and he still wants to wax poetic about this Apple deal. It's unbelievable, man. Just shut up. I mean, can the guy just shut up? Like, we get it. You weren't happy about that. Larry Scott was your boy. You proclaimed boastfully years ago that the Pac-12 would be ahead of everybody instead of now, imploded. So there's pride there. I get it. But you're in a new league, dude. Shut up. You and your athletic director have done nothing but embarrass yourself since you've come into this new league. And I know Arizona State fans you can't control that. I know many of you are very frustrated with it, but like every time I hear Michael Crow talk, just like, why? Why? I'm sure the guy's great. I know everyone says he's great with the academics. I'm sure, but he just could not be more out of touch with the athletic side of things. And clearly, somebody who is not used to being told no and that he was wrong. That's my impression of Michael Crow just from watching him for a little bit here. So I don't know. It'll be interesting watching the Arizona State integration here into the league. For their sports sake, they certainly could use some more and better leadership. I will tell you that much. DHP, what's up, DHP? I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your support. DHP says, great. W destroyed Iraq for a reason and almost got me deleted. Now he wants to help with conference realignment. Yeah, he does want to help with conference realignment. I'd be really interested to actually, maybe that's an interview I can book. Maybe I can get George W. Bush on here to try and make his case for SMU into the ACC. I really wonder what the push is, what George W. Bush can actually do there. Because if you are the ACC, it's like, hey, cool, man, respect, you're a former president, but I don't, how does that give you expertise here that I should listen to? You got a vested interest. We know this is happy wife, happy life. You're trying to make your life happier by making your wife happier here by getting her squad into the conference. Why do I need to be listening to you? I would be very curious as to how those discussions actually go. But I am also kind of here at this point. We're so far, we jumped the shark so much in realignment. I'm kind of into the circus element of it. So bring on the circus, man. Bring on the three-ring circus. Let's get, what other dignitaries could we get involved in the expansion game now that we have George W. Bush in there? Let's, maybe that's an idea for the chat. Who else could we get involved? Who are famous alums we could have lobbying here? Oregon State and Washington State. I need somebody to find me the most famous Oregon State and Washington State alums out there, and let's project who they could actually be having out lobbying for them to make it into one of the major conferences left, because they need to be hitting that hard. They need to be hitting that hard. Get your famous alums out there. Wazoo, Oregon State, make it happen. Chat, let me know who the most famous alums are. DHP, much appreciated, my friend. Thank you for the donation. McMuffin, what's up, McMuffin? McMuffin, always great to see you. McMuffin says, yay. You know what college football needs? Another Texas school in the Power 5. Let's add North Texas, UTSA, and Austin Community College while we're at it. I certainly understand that sentiment. The Texas schools have to be pretty annoyed, I would think, at SMU just completely throwing themselves at the ACC or anybody that might have them. And to be fair, I did see somebody line this up. If you're thinking about the year that SMU has had, they thought they had an in with the Pac-12. George Kliavkoff was literally on their campus, spotted at a basketball game. They think they're getting in there, then the Pac-12 implodes because for whatever reason they wouldn't expand before trying to get their TV deal. So the Pac-12 thing goes away. Now they're trying to get in the ACC. That thing isn't working. Doesn't look like it is likely to happen. Maybe still a slight possibility, but they're kind of just being teased at best by the ACC. So they've got that working against them. And then today we got the news, another news story that will slide under the radar a little bit here, but we got the news that the Iron Skillet game is going to be done. No Iron Skillet game. We have the SMU-TCU rivalry coming to an end because TCU is not apparently keen on playing that anymore. Here was the quote from Brett McMurphy of the Action Network, the tweet rather. It says, TCU indefinitely pausing its series with SMU after the 2025 game, sources told Action Network. The school is located 35 miles apart, first met in 1915. This year's game at TCU will be the 102nd meeting between the Horned Frogs and Mustangs in the Iron Skillet. Okay, after 2025. So I guess we've got a couple left in the tank, but that rivalry is going to be ending. Look, it's been rough for SMU. Death penalty, they got left out when the Southwest Conference imploded. Rough couple of decades here for the Mustangs. I understand their desperation, especially when they have alums with deep pockets here. But I also completely get if you're a TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech, a fan of a Texas school that is not Texas or Texas A&M, that is not already in the SEC, you don't want to see another school elevated to the Power 5 level. You're already having to kind of swallow the Houston thing, where Houston now gets that bump and a little bit of extra prestige. And we know that they sit in a complete recruiting hotbed there in that city. That metro area provides a ton of talent. So you don't want to see them getting helped. I understand, completely do. And now SMU may be getting into the game. And even if we're just talking about beyond only Texas schools, but just other like Hateful Eight schools, other Big 12 schools here, you don't really want to see other Group of Five schools now getting this bump into Power Five, especially if there's any validity to like the Trev Alberts comments, which I know we could debate all day, how likely we think what he had to say that it's only going to be 35 to 40 that really make that cut. But if it is going to be a number that's less than like the 60 that I think most of us would really hope that it's going to be, then you're just bringing in more competition that's already now at the Power Five level. And SMU claims that they will be able to really get it up and running because of their deep pockets if they get to the P5 level. And if that is true and they can elevate themselves pretty fast, well, now you've got more competition there. And that's a school that is in a big market in a talent-rich area. So lots of reasons to be a little perturbed by it if you are a Texas school. I feel you, McMuffin. I absolutely get it. Andre, thank you for your support, Andre. Not seeing any question or comment attached there. And I'm also, because of the way this is working, not really able to see. I'm going to try and scroll back up and see if I can check if there was a message attached to it, just so that I don't screw you over here, Andre. Where did Andre's donation go? There's Andre. I don't see anything, Andre. I do not see anything. So, hey, salute to you. Shout out, my friend. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your support of the channel tonight. Matthew, what's going on, Matthew? I appreciate you, Matthew. As always, Matthew says, nothing says Atlantic Coast like California Bay. Yeah. Nothing says ACC like Palo Alto. You know, I've been to Palo Alto and I've been to ACC country, and they are not very much alike at all. North Carolina and Palo Alto, not similar. Not similar. Yeah. We're in a very weird world. Thank you, Matthew, for your support, and thank you for being here. Rowdy, what's up, Rowdy? We're going Rowdy, aka Iga Swiatek Talboy. If the ACC adds 3 schools, Cal, Stanford, and SMU, they will need one more to have an even number of teams in football. Navy for football only solves that. Well, it would solve the numerical problem there, but I don't know how it would do with like the money problem, because again, all of this is about money. They want to maximize the dollar value that they're bringing in. If they're going to make this work, if you're going to convince somebody else to vote for it, to flip the necessary vote that you need to make expansion actually happen, I would just need to see what the financials look like on all of that. If that would actually work out to where it's not going to suck any money away from anybody else. And I don't know. Do you have to have an even number of teams? We're already I feel like that's one of those things we're kind of stuck in this mindset of like, hey, that seems to make sense and that used to make sense, and that was something we talked about a lot, but we've left all convention behind in conference realignment, as evidenced by the previous comment. Again, nothing says Atlantic Coast like California. We've left all previous notions of what should, quote unquote, happen in these situations behind. So I don't think that it really has to get to even here. I think you just find a way to make it work schedule wise and hold on for the ride, because who knows how long. Florida State's trying to leave. So you could add those schools and then Florida State leaves right away and you're back down to an odd number of schools very fast. So you could be at an odd number of schools, wait for Florida State to just make the jump and see if they actually have a lifeboat out there, jump off the Titanic and hope that they're getting on one of the lifeboats. And then all of a sudden you're down to an even number. So I understand the theory, and like Navy as a football school, I think would definitely be able to compete. As a fan of a guy who watched his squad lose to Navy in the 2019 Liberty Bowl, I believe in their ability to compete there. But I would just need to see like what the financials look like on that. I can't imagine like Florida, any of those schools that are no's right now. I don't think you're going to make them very excited by throwing Navy into the conference, because the thing is, Navy can compete, and they're also you know what to prepare for, because they're so different with the triple option. Like that's not a fun one. That's like eating your vegetables and washing it down with a glass of vinegar, you know, when you're going into that week. That's a root canal. You don't want to deal with that. You do not want to deal with that. What's up, Joe? Joe, I appreciate it. Joe, thank you for your support. Joe says, let's hope W handles this better than he handled some things as president. He's not a W fan. All right. Joe's not a W fan. And really, the way that I kind of read that article and most of what Ross Dellinger was saying, it feels like George W. Bush is perhaps a little bit more secondary in all of this because I think Stanford is really the one driving it. So Condoleezza Rice probably is more important to what is going on here because Stanford is the real big linchpin here. They would be the bigger of the two, at least in terms of the prize. But I guess I say that I don't really know what the lobbying is like behind the scenes and who would be the most likely candidate that you could actually get to flip. Because there was another good article about the ACC from ESPN, and it did talk a little bit about the no votes here. So like NC State was one, and it raises the question, why was NC State not in favor of expansion? The dynamics in the state of North Carolina provide a fascinating window into the North Carolina-NC State relationship. North Carolina is one of the most attractive schools in the country to both the SEC and Big Ten, should those conferences decide to expand further. NC State holds power within the University of North Carolina system and the state legislature. Siding with North Carolina essentially signals the Wolfpack believe their future is tied with UNC. So NC State's just trying not to make North Carolina mad. That's really what it is. They're going to vote in tandem with North Carolina and hope that their future is tied to them. So anyway, long way to get there. But Joe, I appreciate your support. Thank you for being here tonight. And appreciate you as always, my friend. Pensacane, what's up? Love it. Miami fan. Pensacane says, not for expansion. The reason the ACC is in this situation is mediocrity on the field. Yes, to include my Canes. Hey, self-aware Miami fan. We like that. We like that, Pensacane. Thank you. Stanford Cal will not help that. Yeah, Stanford and Cal are definitely not going to help mediocrity on the field. That is perhaps a point that's not being talked about enough here. If you're going to add Stanford and Cal, yes, you are adding the great prestigious universities that are there, which university presidents believe will help the brand. But that arrow is pointed down right now in these football programs. Like, not only are they not good right now, but we're entering an era in college football where it's just going to be tougher and tougher for them to compete, right? Because, you know, the NIL thing, that's not a route that Stanford and Cal are going to be super geeked about going down, and especially the transfer portal with how difficult the academic requirements are there. Like, those are not programs that are built to succeed in an NIL transfer portal world. So I don't really see them getting much better in the near future. I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe Stanford's new hire is going to completely get that thing turned around, and there is a way that I'm not seeing here. But I would not be very bullish on the long term in terms of what they're going to do on the field. So you're adding some dead weight. If that dead weight is going to be paying its own way and you can make a couple extra $1 million and maybe shut Florida State up a little bit for a little while longer, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's worth it. But there is an element, second Titanic reference of the show coming up tonight. There is an element of it feeling like the ACC is a little bit like just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic right now. You know, who wants to be on there? Like Stanford and Cal, you want to jump from the swimming in the water to on the ship for an extra hour before the thing splits in two and sinks? That's kind of what it feels like a bit to me right now, because Florida State seems bound and determined to blow this thing up eventually. But yeah, look, if I were Miami, if I were a Miami fan, like, there's no reason for me to think that like expansion is really a good thing here. Although the interesting part is that Miami, I believe it was reported in this article, is a yes vote right now. Yeah, anyway, I'm not finding it right away in this article, but I believe Miami is a yes vote. So interesting. Now, once again, I mentioned this before. You can be a yes right now, and if it really came down, like somebody flipped and it came down to, okay, now you've got to like actually vote yes for this to matter, maybe Miami would feel a little bit differently. I'm not sure, but I appreciate your perspective, Pensacane. I hope you are not a stranger to the channel and stick around here. Love getting perspectives from other leagues and places that we don't hear from very often, which would be Miami. We've not heard a lot from Cane fans throughout all this. So thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Zach, what's up, Zach? Zach, good to see you. Zach says, John, how is it that Cincy hasn't played a single millisecond of Big 12 football, and we somehow now feel part of an old guard for the conference? You know, that is a very funny phenomenon that you point out, because that is true. That is 100% true. I feel like the OG for joiners to the conference, like, you guys, we haven't even started this season yet to get you playing, and so much has happened. And now there are so many new shiny toys coming into the league that, yeah, it does feel like you've been here for a while and like fighting these battles with us, because for over a year now, you've been in here like trying to stick up for the Big 12, fighting for the respect of the Big 12. 2 years now, I guess. It's really been 2 years since the announcement, I think almost to the day. So you've been around for a long time fighting this good fight with us here in Big 12 circles, and have some battle scars with that. And that is a weird thing. You're right. It'll probably start to, Zach, I would imagine, feel a little bit different once the games do actually start occurring. Like everyone will kind of be like, oh, okay, this is new. But for right now, you've been a part of kind of the fan ecosphere for a long time. So it feels like what is happening here? You're the old guard. So I appreciate you, Zach. It's great to hear from you, man. Thank you for being here. Can't wait to get the game started and see what your Bearcats have in store this year. Man, H. Dwayne Black, I appreciate the support immensely. Wildly generous donation. Thank you. I appreciate your support so much. H. Dwayne Black says, watched you from the very beginning. I created you with changing the narrative. I'm going to say assume credit. I credit you with changing the narrative. You are the best. And since I can't figure out how to raise the donation, I will just do this a lot of times. I figured it out. Go with God. Hey, H. Dwayne Black, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. You can also, I'll just throw it out. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. H. Dwayne Black, if you have a Venmo, you could contribute to the channel that way as well. But I very, very much appreciate this donation. You are far too kind. And I was a piece of a lot of people, a piece of the machine that was Big 12 Twitter and just the Big 12 YouTube sphere fighting for the channel, trying to change that narrative. You know, the 365 guys have been excellent with that. Coos, Golden Blue Dude, rest in peace. You know, I mean, there have been so many guys, and I shouldn't start down this road because I'm going to leave people out. Like anybody that's been doing Big 12 YouTube content certainly has been fighting to change this narrative as well, like Mountaineer Paul. Lots of guys out there that have done just a phenomenal job with that. So I've just been blessed to be a part of it. Blessed to have you guys here as a part of the channel, as an audience that has given me this platform. And I am happy to do it, man. Happy to do it. Happy to fight for this conference as always. So, man, thank you so much once again, H. Dwayne Black. Thank you for being such a big fan of the channel. And I look forward to continuing to seeing you here, my friend. Thank you so much. Delarick, what's up, Delarick? Delarick says all non-Power 4 schools have 12 years to get P. Ready for when the ACC deal ends in 20. Okay. All non-Power 4 schools have 12 years to get ready for when the ACC deal ends in 2036 when the next round of realignment happens. Perhaps, but we also may be at that point, it might just be like the ship has sailed on all of that because, I mean, I see that being like ACC, and by the way, very much up for dispute, I think, whether or not we get to 2036. But if and when this happens, whenever that is going to be, whenever it does happen, you're going to have the Big 12 probably, if it stays kind of like it is right now, the Big 12 scoop up the best of the rest from the ACC, and then you'll have all the big major brands in the Big 10 and the SEC, and that feels like that would probably be it. I guess I see what, like if somebody turns in like a Boise State sort of a run where they have that much prominence over the next 10 years, they're making consistent playoff appearances now in the expanded playoff. Maybe they're winning a couple of games. That perhaps could change it, I guess, and make them attractive enough at that point in time. I would think they'd probably still have to also be, I don't know, either developed enough of a brand or be like an SMU where they're in a major media market to have something else that's a little more enticing. Major media market and in a hotbed of talent like Texas. But I think it's probably not quite that simple for those. And I think that is exactly why, Delarick, you're seeing SMU conduct itself the way that it is right now, which is desperation. They are basically agreeing to pay, I mean, you know, upwards of $300, $400, $500 million to actually get themselves just into the league, figure out the rest later, use the donors to throw the bag out there, and then figure everything else out because they feel like this is the last shot. I think their desperation is kind of telling you where they think at least the landscape is going, that they may be totally left out if they don't get there. And right on cue, our web says, can't blame SMU. This is likely their last shot at Power 4. Speaking of things that seem weird, I mean, already just looking at that, Power 4. But yes, I would agree. This very well may be the last shot for SMU to get into the Power 4. So yeah, maybe it's not, maybe you could look at it and kind of make fun of it. Like, oh man, they're just willing to pay their way and they're trying to get George W. Bush involved and all these people. But like, desperate times, desperate measures, man. I mean, remember how it felt 2 years ago. for everybody in the Big 12. I would have been doing whatever I could, whether that's calling on famous alums or whatever. I can understand. I can understand the position that they feel like they're in. Warrior Pride 65 has a good one here. Warrior Pride 65, in reference to George W. Bush, says the WMDs were all those ridiculous PowerPoints from Tony Altomore that the Pac-12 presidents took seriously. That's pretty funny. Well, let me call back to an early reference here. This was an early in the Big 12 v. Pac-12 battle reference that we have here. Remember when George Kliavkoff said that his conference was taking grenades from the Big 12? It was all grenades that were coming at the Big 12. Now we have weapons of mass destruction entering the chat here. So maybe the real WMDs were the grenades being thrown by the Big 12 early on. And that kind of takes me back to my original comp, which was that the WMD is Brett Yormark here. I feel like it was actually the grenades that George Kliavkoff referenced early on. I think we can all agree on that, right? We can all agree on that. Warrior Pride 65, again, appreciate you, my friend. Warrior Pride 65 says, why is W just now trying to get SMU in a Power 5 conference when they had a chance to join the Big 12 after Texas and Oklahoma left? Again, I would hearken it back to the desperation here, where it feels like the landscape is shifting so much, so fast, and we all know where it's going. Like there's a much more clear path to where this is all going than there was back in even when Texas and OU left a couple of years ago. That there's just an added sense of desperation. Also, in that scenario, the Big 12 moved really fast. It did not take long for Bob Bowlesby to really identify those 4 schools and go out there and get them. So it may have been that Bowlesby very quickly was like, no, we've got our eyes on Houston. We feel like Houston is higher up the pecking order, a little ready to contribute. And perhaps most importantly, they're in Houston as opposed to DFW. We've already got DFW covered. I think that could be it too. Like both sides just realizing like, hey, TCU is already in the league. We know that they're not going to want someone else from DFW. There's probably not a realistic shot. I think it just moved faster, and both sides would have looked at that and kind of realized the reality of the situation, which is that it was not very likely to happen. And I don't know, maybe it was just nobody thought to call George W. Bush at that point. Maybe now it's like, you're just digging deeper into the Rolodex as the desperation increases. It could just be as simple as that too. Matt, what's up, Matt? Thank you for being here. Matt says Stanford go independent. Better ask BYU how to do it. Independent is tricky and not very fun, I would think. And I'm sure Stanford then would basically be, you'd be going independent in football, but you'd still have to deal with a lot of the logistics of joining a conference, because then they're going to have to send their non-revenue sports somewhere. Whether that becomes the Mountain West, they have to like plug their nose and join the Mountain West for all their precious Olympic sports teams. I don't know. Just for travel money purposes and just the stress purposes of not having to travel super far. But yeah, that becomes now you're kind of almost pulling double duty there. So not fun. Would not be a fun thing at all for Stanford to have to be doing. Rick, what's up, Rick? Rick Jr. Excuse me, Rick. Rick is your father. How dare I? Rick Jr. Thank you, Rick, for the donation. I appreciate it. Rick Jr. says, once we become a 16-team conference, what are your top 5 football and basketball matchups without using repeat schools within each sport? Oh man, this is like a homework assignment almost. Well, new Big 12. I always have to. If I'm going to do this, I've got to just like bring up the list of teams, because otherwise I'll screw it up. I mean, I don't know that I can give you. I hope you understand. I don't know that I'll be able to like on the fly without thinking about it here, extrapolate it out to a list of 5. For each, but I'll give you, I think basket, especially if I'm not going to repeat, like Houston will get kind of killed. Well, we'll go like Houston, Baylor. We're talking basketball here, like Houston, Baylor, Kansas, Arizona. We're not bringing a lot of basketball juice with really any of the others. Those are your 2 big basketball ones. So as it relates to realignment, I'm going to plug those 2 on the basketball side. Houston, Baylor, Kansas, Arizona, because you're not allowing me to use repeats there. Football, BYU, Utah. The Holy War is number 1. We've discussed that. Arizona, Arizona State. I am excited for that rivalry as well, especially with some of the added dynamics of realignment and leadership at Arizona State and like all that. I am very much here for watching how Arizona and Arizona State duke it out in football. Both also, I think, like promising programs right now that have good coaches and have things at least moving in the right direction there. I want to get UCF involved here because I think when we're talking about football in the new conference, like UCF absolutely deserves to be involved here somewhere. I don't know, maybe can I go like a UCF TCU, like a UCF TCU football matchup? Kind of intrigues me. TCU, obviously, college football playoff, national championship game last year. I would submit that. Maybe like a Cincinnati, West Virginia, just because of the proximity factor there. So those are some thoughts for you. I hope that suffices, Rick. I know it's not a total top five, but I hope that suffices for you. It's a good question. It's a very good question. Thank you, Rick Jr. Matthew, what's up, Matthew? Yeah, Matthew. Dwayne Black raising the bar for the rest of us. He did, but do not feel pressured. Much appreciate Dwayne for that. Much appreciated. Much appreciate you, Matthew, as well. But do not feel pressured necessarily by that. I sincerely do appreciate all the support you guys give me. I mean, could not be doing this here without you. You guys are awesome. If you could like the video right now, good chance to remind you to do that. If you could like the video, I would really appreciate it. That is another very easy way, totally free way, just one click to help the channel. Subscribe if you have not. I'm live twice a week, put in other content as well. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you're watching this after the fact, if you'd like to donate as well. And if you're a K-State fan, remember, we've got a 3MA Patreon page now that you can sign up for to get some bonus K-State content. You can find that at patreon.com/3MA. Again, Matthew, thank you so much, my friend. Joe. What's up, Joe? Joe checking in again. Joe says, I heard for years and years that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State would not go anywhere without the other until they did. Beware of so-called being tied together. Yeah, completely agree. This is, again, back to the convo of like norms and realignment when somebody had mentioned like, hey, you need somebody to get to an even number in the ACC if you're going to add 3 schools. Could not agree more. Like Arizona, I think, was prepared to do it regardless of what reporting you've seen after the fact. I think Arizona was ready to do it if Arizona State wasn't going to come with. Obviously, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State has happened. UCLA, Cal, UCLA made that break, and we saw the stink that was put up there for a little while by the Board of Regents and George Kliavkov, and yet it still happened. Like, yeah, it just doesn't matter anymore. Because, again, if you are like a Board of Regents looking at this, sure, you don't want one to suffer and you'd rather have them together. But at the end of the day, if one school is going to be making that much more money and your options are this school can make $40 million extra dollars a year or just everybody stays the same, well, then you're leaving that much money on the table and extra opportunities for students and student athletes in your state. So, I mean, that to me is kind of the bottom line on the decision, as much as that sort of sucks. The Yates 27, what's up, the Yates 27? Thank you for being here. The Yates 27 says, haven't been able to catch you live, coming in late tonight. Excited for Penn State. Do what you do, JK. Hey, thank you, the Yates 27. I am excited for West Virginia to beat Penn State. I will tell you that right now. I had some West Virginia fans jumping in my mentions talking about that. I do not particularly care for Penn State because I think they get fat and happy on a weak Big Ten schedule every year and then get housed by Ohio State. Call it a 9-3, 10-2 season, and then go beat Utah in the Rose Bowl. Like, that's kind of what Penn State does, and it's rather annoying because I think if they were in a league with better depth, they would not be doing that every single year. Now, they also wouldn't have a game potentially as high stakes as Ohio State. But like, for instance, if we put them in the new look Big 12, but I'd love to see how they fared there because I think they just have so many weeks where they're not really truly tested very much. So I am with you, the Yates 27. I am excited for that as well. Let me make sure, and I see that we have a couple of other donations. I promise I will get to those very shortly, but I want to get you this. This was an important one from Mr. Yormark, Brett Yormark, talking about Gonzaga and UCONN and expansion in general on the Marchand and Oram podcast. Once again, you need to go listen to it. Very good interview. I thought Yormark was pretty candid. Just fun to listen to him. I enjoy listening to him in those settings in longer form interviews. But the headline to come out of it was this. This is the quote. He said, "Those conversations are no longer. Unfortunately, things didn't work out. only because the dream scenario of adding Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah unfolded for us. Things didn't work out because the dream scenario unfolded for us. So we kind of knew this the whole time. Yormark had he had a little crush on UCONN and Gonzaga. Wanted to add them for basketball only. He is definitely trying to take basketball only to a different place. He mentioned that again, that they are really going to work to create extra value for that. He said basketball is 25% of what is going on in expansion and TV contracts and all that, and that they're not getting 25 cents on the dollar for basketball. And he thinks he can get the Big 12 there, which would be a significant amount of extra money. So he definitely is all about the basketball thing, but he also understands having the better overall schools with better overall athletic programs is the better way to go. You would much rather have the four corner schools than UConn Gonzaga in some fashion, whether that's UConn all sports or UConn basketball only, and building up the basketball behemoth, which I want them to do. And they're still clearly working towards that in a way. But this was the better thing to happen for the league. And I'm just thankful that it did. And I think for right now, it makes sense to stand pat. It may not even really be their choice, because I would imagine like TV is kind of being like, hey, yo, like, let's just chill for a bit right now. Let's just chill. Everybody probably needs to chill for a bit. Like Zach mentioned earlier, Cincinnati feels like they've been a longstanding member of this conference. They haven't even played a game yet as a Big 12 conference member. And it's just because of this wild world and this wild realignment cycle that we have been in. So we need to just pump the brakes, everybody get their bearings. Plus the other factor here that I would say is why it is wise to not go make that move is that the ACC is in flux, in turmoil. I'll probably have a standalone video coming to you on Florida State and what's going on there, because there was some really good reporting from ESPN on that, particularly Florida State and the Big Ten, which was where the rumors really first started to swirl about what is going on there. But Florida State still seems bound and determined, even if they didn't make it past this deadline, August 15th, which is what they needed to leave in 2024. They still seem very much bound and determined to leave the ACC sooner rather than later. So wait and see what happens there before you go adding schools that are not currently sitting Power 5 members. I think that is very much the wise way to go. And I think a lot of people who are upset about the Big 12 adding 4 teams, which are not many, but there is a somewhat vocal minority of people who would say, like, it shouldn't have been 4 that you added when you added the group of 5 schools in BYU. It should have been 2, and it should have been X and Y that got left out, whoever it might be. That crowd probably is sitting there screaming, like, yeah, let's not do the Gonzaga and Utah thing. So seems sound to me. And look, I do have to kind of think, like, okay, if Yormark is going to publicly say it, like, is there some sort of angle he's working there? Everybody always has one in realignment. I don't know, but to publicly come out and say it right now to kind of confirm that, after we've seen, like, Jamie Pollard, Iowa State athletic director, had said that on 365. Like, we had seen others within the league already saying that, but to have him come out and really firmly say that while doing a prominent podcast interview, I think would tell you that the brakes have been put on that for right now. But you never know, man. Yormark's, he's always playing like that 4D chess that George Kliavkov did not seem to be adept at. Perhaps there is some extra move going on there. We'll see. Cat fan in Huskerland, aka Daniel Osborne, appreciate you, my friend, as always. Thank you for being here. Daniel says maybe Stanford can get Elway and Cal can get Tony Gonzalez to fight for them. That's pretty good. You had John Elway, Condoleezza Rice, George W. Bush, Tony Gonzalez, all in a room together. That's some pretty good star power. Cal's got to have a pretty healthy list of famous alums, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, you could get Aaron Rodgers all high on ayahuasca and send him into the meeting, see what that does. Maybe Rodgers can just take everybody on a darkness retreat, and by the end of the darkness retreat, they would decide that SMU, Cal, and Stanford deserves to be in the ACC. That's what needs to happen. Cal, get Aaron Rodgers on the horn. Get Rodgers to take everybody into one of those darkness retreats where they just sit in a hole for like 4 days and get food fed through them through like a slot in the door. And then I think you have this realization at the end of the day, like, oh, we should just go ahead and expand, add everybody here. Take Florida State, get the whole Florida State Board of Trustees to go on the darkness retreat with Aaron Rodgers, and all of this could be solved rather quickly. Daniel says, also, are you going to get a box of Kelsey's Crunch to go with your Mahomes Magic? Thank you. Great show, John, and go Cats. I'm saying thank you before I read the last part. Thank you for that. Well, look, Travis Kelce is my dude, and Travis Kelce is another certified Big 12 legend, just like Patrick Mahomes. Couple of certified Big 12 legends there for the Chiefs. So I would take any and all Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce memorabilia that I could possibly get. So, yes, I'm open to whatever cereal Travis Kelce has. I watched his dating show back in the day, Catching Kelce. I am all about it. All about it, my friend. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate your support as always. Go Cats. Indeed. Rowdy is back. What's up, Rowdy? Rowdy says Big 12's ACC wish list for schools that are realistic. Louisville, Pitt, Virginia Tech, and Duke. Syracuse or Georgia Tech would be next in line. Syracuse and Georgia Tech, yeah, they seem to be kind of on that borderline. I've heard them discussed with the Big Ten before, but I don't know if they would actually make the cut for that. And then depending on who else is available, are they supremely attractive for the Big 12 at that point? I do think like Louisville, Pitt. I mean, Pitt gives you all of a sudden now you got the backyard brawl in there. They're close to West Virginia. Louisville is a school that the Big 12 came close to adding at one point in time. That would make a lot of sense. I think Yormark would love Duke basketball. I would imagine, you'd have to imagine, right, that Yormark would love Duke basketball enough to go ahead and make that move. And then Tech is another one that's like on that kind of cut line for probably more likely the SEC as to whether or not they would get in there eventually if we really do go complete consolidation here and the ACC is blowing up. So that would be another one. Like, yeah, if they don't make the cut, I think that is one that you'd probably scoop up if you are the Big 12. So I think that's a pretty solid analysis there, Rowdy. Pretty solid analysis of what is happening. Rick Jr. Rick Jr. says, yes, John, Rick Sr. is my dad. Yeah, nailed it. On the top 5 question, you didn't mention K-State, so I'm curious who's your top football and basketball matchup for K-State from the 8 new teams? Okay, good question. I think some of that was like some deference to Baylor. Like Baylor has been such an incredible program at a national level for a long time, and I think Jerome Tang is going to get K-State there, assuming that he sticks around for a while. But I was being different to them. Who do I want to see him play? I mean, K-State, Arizona sounds pretty awesome. Like I think it was Gene Taylor, and do a shameless 3-Maw plug here, my K-State podcast 3-Maw. We had Gene Taylor, the athletic director at K-State, on. Derek and Cole handled that. I was not there, but I think he mentioned I don't remember if he mentioned Arizona specifically or just getting the new schools to Bramlage. And I thought like that kind of light bulb went off like, oh, at some point, like Arizona is going to come to Bramlage. That'll be awesome. And I'm a guy, like I grew up as a kid kind of, K-State basketball was terrible and I followed the heck out of it, lived and died with it. It was a terrible life to live. But I always had an affinity for Arizona because I thought they were just really cool. I like the uniforms. The shorts were awesome. I actually have a pair of their basketball shorts. So I kind of liked them. They also knocked out that 97 KU team. I liked them for that. So I've always had a little bit of an affinity for Arizona. So that would be a really cool one to watch K-State play them. Football. I mean, I think Utah becomes really intriguing. I saw a bowl projection today. I think it was Heartland College Sports that had K-State and Utah in the Alamo Bowl. But Utah seems like such a similar kind of program to K-State, doing less with more. Utah has been more consistent and doing it at a higher level here lately. Don't get me wrong on that, but I would love to see K-State go up against Utah. I think they kind of are pretty similar in terms of how they operate, the vibe of the programs, certainly. Blue collar programs with great culture. So I think that one jumps off the page at you. Beyond that, Colorado, I mean, for old school purposes, it'll be nice to play Colorado. I shouldn't just gloss over that. For me, selfishly, like I'm really looking forward to getting back to Boulder. So I hope that happens sooner rather than later. So Rick Jr. and Rick Sr., hope that answers your question there with the K-State matchups. But appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for being here. Cyclone Steve. What's up, Cyclone Steve? Cyclone Steve says UConn had a chance, wouldn't bend, so they broke. UConn just barely. I don't. Part of this, though, is like I don't know how much UConn really wanted this. Another take that I saw that was out there today was John Rothstein. I don't remember who specifically it was. I feel like it came from the college basketball world, and the take was basically like this was probably better for both sides, for UConn and the Big 12, that it didn't work out because UConn can stay in the Big East. being a tremendous basketball conference where they're at right now, and kind of a place that they belong more, and probably it's just more natural for them. And then the Big 12 got what they really wanted and needed, which was the four corner schools there, and it probably just worked out the best for both. So I think there's an element of that at play for the UConn thing, even though I understand why Yormark was there, and maybe I'm sure it'll be on the back burner for a while, but maybe that pops back up here at some point in time. Tim, what's up, Tim? Thank you for your support, Tim. I appreciate you, my friend. Tim says, looking forward to an outstanding football season in the most exciting conference top to bottom in the country. Go Cats. Thanks for representing us all, John. Hey, Tim, I appreciate that. Very kind of you to say. I try my hardest to represent the Big 12. K-State very well here, so I really do appreciate that. And I was going to say, with the most exciting conference top to bottom, just be careful about calling it the deepest conference in the country, because I believe that's what got John Canzano's feathers all ruffled up when Brett Yormark said that during his Steve Jobsian speech on stage at Big 12 Media Days. So just a word to the wise, Tim. If you're trying to stay out of John Canzano's S list, just make sure that you're not going to be saying too much about how deep the Big 12 is respective to the rest of the country. And look, I get it. The Pac-12 is pretty deep this year, but the Big 12 in recent history, I think, would be able to lay more claim to that than the Pac-12. But Tim, you're too kind. Thank you for your support. I really, really do appreciate it. Finally, looks like, man, if I mispronounce this, I am so sorry. But Jobany Corona says Marshawn Lynch would be the most convincing person Cal could ever send to get them into the ACC. Totally agree with that, dude. Marshawn Lynch would be awesome. And I think Marshawn Lynch would be all about my darkness retreat idea. Like, I could see Marshawn being like, yeah, hey, let me go do that. As long as, I guess, you just get him his bag of Skittles that he's famous for. Like, just have a big old industrial-sized bag of Skittles down there in the darkness retreat, and he could hang out there and make things really exciting. That would be a fun guy. I mean, look, I love Marshawn Lynch. Both the player and the guy off the field. That is just a delightful personality. So I agree. Marshawn Lynch, very good suggestion there for Cal. Very, very good. Okay. I think that's going to wrap it up for me, guys. I appreciate all of you being here tonight so much. Fun chat. I should have some standalone content coming to you the rest of the week, because there's just been so much coming out rapid fire that have not been able to totally get into it all in depth. So I'm going to try and do that for you. So be on the lookout for it. And should be back with another live show on Sunday, assuming that nothing crazy happens between now and then. Couple reminders. Tell your friends and family about the channel. I'm asking you to tell one friend about this if they are a college football fan, a Big 12 sports fan, college football, college basketball, whatever it might be you think they'd enjoy this. Please let them know. Spread the word via your social channels, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, whatever it is that you're using. Let your friends and family know about, and your followers know about this channel. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you are not catching this live and you like to support the channel, that is a very easy way to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at JLKurtz. And if you would like the video on the way out the door, I would much appreciate that as well. And leave a comment in the comment section, whether you love me, hate me, agree, disagree. All of that helps. That would be great as well. All right. Fun to be here with you tonight. It has been good. I'm in StreamYard. I feel like I'm getting the hang of StreamYard a little bit more here. It has been real, my friends. Take care. Have a great rest of your evening, and I will talk to you all soon.